There's a certain kind of person who notices something strange after scrolling through their contacts. Dozens of names, years of history, people from school, people from work, people they once spoke to almost every day. And yet, when something important happens, only one or two people come to mind. Maybe none. Not because they dislike people, not because people dislike them, but because somewhere along the way, their social world became remarkably small. Most people never talk about this openly. Instead, they compare themselves to what they see around them. The friend groups, the constant messages, the invitations, the social circles that seem to expand effortlessly. And when they compare their own lives to that picture, they often arrive at an uncomfortable conclusion. Something must be wrong. Maybe they're too quiet, too distant, too difficult, too different. Society tends to treat friendship as a numbers game. More friends often looks healthier. More social activity often looks more successful. And people with small social circles can sometimes feel as though they're failing a test everyone else understands. But what if that isn't what is happening at all? What if having very few friends is not always a social problem? What if it's the result of a psychological pattern that most people never recognize? Because when people talk about friendship, they often focus on quantity. Psychology often focuses on something else entirely: compatibility, trust,
Emotional safety. Researchers who study social relationships consistently find that humans are not simply looking for interaction. They're looking for connection that feels meaningful, connection that feels genuine, connection that allows the nervous system to relax. And different people require different amounts of that before they feel close to someone. This is where the story starts to become more interesting. Because what most people assume is that individuals with few friends simply struggle socially. What psychology suggests is often very different. Many people with small social circles are not less interested in connection. They're often more selective about it. Their brain spends more time evaluating trust, more time evaluating consistency, more time evaluating emotional safety. And that process changes everything. Modern neuroscience describes the brain as constantly assessing risk and reward. Not just physical risk, social risk. Long before you consciously decide whether someone feels close to you, your nervous system is already gathering information. Can this person be trusted? Are they predictable? Do I feel accepted around them? Can I relax here? Most of this happens automatically, and some people seem to have systems that are slightly more sensitive, a nervous system that takes longer to grant access. At first glance, this can look like distance, but what psychology suggests is more nuanced. The brain may not be trying to create isolation, it may be trying to create safety, and that distinction changes the entire story. Because people rarely develop these patterns in a vacuum. Often they develop through experience. Sometimes trust was broken repeatedly. Sometimes friendships felt unpredictable. Sometimes acceptance seemed conditional. Sometimes belonging disappeared without warning. Experiences like these teach lessons, not through words, through repetition. The nervous system adapts, quietly, gradually, without permission. The brain begins learning that closeness carries risk. And when something carries risk, the brain becomes more careful, more selective, more observant. Over time, friendship stops being something that happens automatically. It becomes something that must be earned. Not because the person wants distance, because somewhere along the way, caution became associated with protection. This is why many people with very few friends are often misunderstood. Others assume they are antisocial, detached, uninterested. But what psychology often finds is something different. Many of them care deeply about connection, perhaps more deeply than people realize. Which brings us to a paradox. The problem is not always that some people struggle to connect. The problem is often that they struggle to connect superficially.
When they meet someone new, they aren't just looking for conversation. They're looking for consistency, character, trustworthiness, emotional depth. And those qualities take time to reveal themselves. What most people assume is social withdrawal, what psychology suggests is extended evaluation. What might actually be happening is that the person is gathering evidence before allowing themselves to feel safe. And that process naturally produces fewer friendships. But it also creates something else. The same person who takes longer to trust often notices things other people miss. Patterns in behavior, changes in consistency, small contradictions, moments when words and actions stop matching. Research on social perception suggests that some individuals process interpersonal information with unusual depth. They pay attention to details that others quickly overlook. And sometimes those details matter. This is one of the hidden strengths that rarely gets discussed. The same selectiveness that limits social circles can improve social judgment. The same caution that reduces opportunities can sometimes prevent painful mistakes. But every strength carries a cost, and this one is no exception. Because the same mind that carefully evaluates trust can sometimes struggle to find it. The same awareness that detects inconsistencies can also detect reasons for doubt. The same standards that protect meaningful connection can reduce the number of people who qualify for it.
And that can become lonely, not because there are no people available, because very few people feel safe enough. This is why having few friends cannot automatically be classified as good or bad. Different minds solve different problems. Some people prioritize breadth. Others prioritize depth. Some gain energy from many connections. Others gain security from a few trusted ones. Neither approach is inherently superior. Neither is inherently inferior. They simply serve different psychological needs. And understanding that distinction matters because it changes the question. The question stops being, why don't I have more friends? And becomes, what does my nervous system need before it feels safe enough to trust? Those are very different questions, and they often lead to very different answers. When viewed through that lens, a small social circle starts to look different, less like evidence that something is missing, more like evidence of how your mind learned to navigate connection, a strategy, an adaptation, a system built around protection. Whether that strategy still serves you in every situation is another question entirely. But understanding where it came from changes the relationship you have with it, because it becomes easier to stop seeing yourself as socially defective and start seeing the pattern beneath the behavior. If you have very few friends, it may not be because you're incapable of connection. It may be because your brain places a high value on trust before connection can happen. So it waits, it observes, it evaluates. Not because you are broken, because somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned that closeness should be approached carefully. And if this felt familiar, there may be another layer beneath it. Because for many people, the size of their social circle has less to do with personality than it does with how the brain learned what safety looks like in relationships.